Mom says Santa forgot us again. The little boy said it to the lonely billionaire at the bus stop on Christmas Eve. The city shimmered with holiday cheer. Lights laced across storefronts, restaurant doors opened and closed on bursts of laughter, and families hurried past in scarves and thick coats, arms filled with last-minute gifts. The air was sharp with cold but loud with music, conversation, and the smell of roasted chestnuts from a cart down the avenue. 2 blocks away, none of that warmth reached. Under a flickering street lamp, a nearly forgotten bus stop sat at the edge of a quiet sidewalk. Snow dusted the metal bench, its surface biting through gloves. The only sounds were the occasional whoosh of a passing car, and the wind cutting through the dark. Mark Grant sat at one end of the bench. His coat was heavy, but nothing about him suggested warmth. His face carried that gray, deep kind of tired that sleep never touches. His dark hair was unkempt, his eyes flat and distant. A paper cup of coffee, already cold, rested in his gloved hand untouched. He looked like any other man waiting for something that never came. The world knew him as a billionaire. Tonight he was just alone. At the other end of the bench, a young woman curled around her son. Her long blonde hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, strands framing her flushed cheeks. Her coat was too thin for the weather, her boots scuffed. Still, she smiled each time the boy looked up at her, rubbing his small hands between hers to keep them warm. The boy, about 6, had wide eyes and a red nose. His jeans were too short at the ankles, and the sleeves of his sweater barely reached his wrists. He tried to sit still, but his gaze kept darting toward the street. "Is that our car, Mommy?" he asked quietly as another SUV glided by. Anna shook her head. "No, sweetheart. That's someone else going home." He fell silent, watching the glow of passing windows, the shadows of laughing people inside. All that light and warmth just out of reach. A gust of wind swept through the shelter. Anna pulled him closer, and he burrowed into her shoulder. The bus stop slipped back into silence. Then the boy whispered, so softly it almost didn't leave his lips. "Mom said Santa forgot us again." The words floated on the cold air, fragile, dangerously light. Mark's hand stilled around the paper cup. He didn't drink. Slowly, as if pulled, he turned his head. His eyes settled on the boy, not irritated, but heavy with something that hurt when it moved. That voice, that small voice, sounded like another he could still hear if he let himself. His daughter, same age, same innocence, had once waited by a window on Christmas Eve. He had promised he'd be home. She'd drawn him a picture and stayed up late, but he'd stayed at the office, chasing numbers instead of bedtime stories. He had missed that night, and then he had lost her completely. Mark blinked hard. Anna noticed him watching. She shifted slightly, tightening her arm around her son, ready to pull him closer. Before she could, Mark spoke, his voice low, careful. "How old are you?" The boy looked to his mother. She nodded. 6, he said. "I turned 6 last week. We had cake from the store. It was vanilla." Mark nodded. "Vanilla's good." The boy brightened. "Even when the frosting melts in Mom's bag on the bus." Anna gave a soft laugh. "He talks more when he's cold," she said, not quite apologizing. Mark's gaze dropped briefly to her coat, too thin for the temperature, then to her hands, faintly trembling. Her eyes tried to stay bright, but worry pressed in around the edges. "I could call a cab," he offered. "Get you somewhere warm." She shook her head. "That's kind. But we're okay. We're waiting for the bus." Mark glanced down the empty street. Snow had started again, heavier now, drifting past the street lamp in thick white lines. Outside the small circle of light, the world felt far away and muffled. Something about this scene, the woman, the boy, the cold, stirred in him. It felt like an echo, like a warning, like a chance he hadn't earned. He looked again at the boy, who now watched the falling snow in quiet fascination. Deep in Mark's chest, something sealed over long ago shifted. The snow quickly turned into a quiet curtain, blurring the street. The flickering street lamp above them barely pushed through the haze. Anna checked her phone again, her frozen fingers fumbling with the screen. "No service," she muttered, then lifted her eyes back up the street. Jamie, she'd called him that earlier, dozed against her shoulder, his breath fogging her coat. Mark stood a few feet away, his breath coming in faint white clouds. He saw it. The small, contained panic that only lives in a mother's eyes when the world feels like it might fail her child. "The bus isn't coming," he said, voice calm. Anna looked over, hesitant. "You sure?" He nodded toward the snow. "Storm's thick enough. They've probably canceled the late routes." She swallowed and hugged Jamie tighter. "We'll wait a little longer. Just in case." He didn't argue. He stared at the snow-covered sidewalk, then said more gently, "My place is a few blocks from here. It's empty. You can come in to warm up." Anna straightened. "We're fine. We're used to this. It's just a house," he said. "No strings. You don't have to stay long. Just not out here." Jamie stirred, lifting his head. He rubbed his eyes and peered at Mark, then whispered into his mother's ear, not nearly as quietly as he thought. "He looks like Santa. Like the one I drew." Anna laughed under her breath and looked at Mark again. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away. Her gaze moved between the man and the little boy tugging her hand. Instinct warned her to keep walking, to trust no one. But another, older instinct, the one shaped by loneliness and exhaustion, recognized something in Mark that didn't feel like danger. Felt like a different kind of loneliness. One she understood. "Okay," she said at last. "Just for a little while." Jamie clapped his hands. "Is it a castle, Mr. Santa?" Mark blinked, then gave the smallest nod. "Not quite. But it has walls. And heat." His house stood on a quiet side street, stone steps leading up to a dark door framed by iron railings. Wide windows looked out over the snow, elegant but dim. It felt like a place waiting for something to happen. Jamie ran ahead, boots crunching and slipping in the snow. Anna followed more slowly, still unsure, anxiety at war with cold and fatigue. Inside, warmth met them like a blanket. Mark switched on the lights. The air smelled faintly of dust and coffee. Everything was clean and expensive but lifeless. Notice. No tree. No music. No sign of Christmas at all. Jamie turned in a slow circle. "Where's your Christmas stuff?" Mark stopped. "I didn't put any up this year." "Why not?" Anna glanced at him, but he just said, "It's been a while since I felt like celebrating." Jamie accepted that and wandered off, curiosity winning over disappointment. Anna hovered near the front door. "You're sure it's okay we're here?" "Of course." He shrugged out of his coat. "There. Coffee. Tea would be nice." In the sleek, quiet kitchen, Anna stayed near the doorway while Mark filled the kettle. Their breath seemed louder than the faint hiss of the gas flame. From deeper in the house, Jamie's voice echoed, bright. "There's a big tree in the closet." Mark looked up. He found the storage room. "A tree?" Anna asked. He hesitated. "My daughter used to decorate it. Before." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Anna's face softened. She didn't ask more. Mark turned back to the kettle. His hands shook as he set out mugs. "They were coming to surprise me," he said suddenly, voice low. "My wife and daughter. I told them not to, the roads were bad. I stayed at the office anyway. I had a meeting I thought couldn't wait." Silence filled the room like another presence. "I didn't go to the hospital until the next morning," he added. "I told myself there was still time, but there wasn't. Not for her." Anna's eyes brimmed. "I'm so sorry." He nodded once. "No one's really been in this house since." She stepped a little closer. "You don't owe me this story." "No," he looked at the floor. "But I needed someone to hear it." She swallowed. "I've lost things too," she said softly. "Not the same things. But dreams. Plans. Family." He met her gaze. "When I told mine I was pregnant," she said, "they stopped calling. I didn't finish school. I worked nights. I lied to Jamie about Santa." Mark studied her, really seeing her now. Not just a woman sheltering from the cold, but someone living in the ruins of what she'd once hoped for. "I still try for him though," she added quietly, a small, tired smile tugging at her mouth. "That's one thing I didn't lose." In that quiet, snow-lit kitchen, something passed between them. Not pity. Recognition. Two people broken in different ways but broken just the same. The artificial tree leaned in the corner of the storage room, metal branches folded inward like a memory trying to disappear. Dust coated its plastic needles, and a string of dead lights drooped from the top. Jamie reached for it with both hands, eyes shining. "Mr. Mark, can I help decorate it? Please." Mark stood in the doorway, staring at the tree he had avoided for years. The house felt utterly still, like it was holding its breath. At last he nodded. "Just once." Jamie hooped and spun toward his mother. "Mom? Please." Anna gave Mark a searching look, checking if he truly meant it. He nodded again, this time with the faintest curve of his mouth. Soon the living room was filled with the sounds of cardboard flaps tearing and old boxes sliding across the floor. Jamie sat cross-legged, pulling out tangled garlands and worn ornaments shaped like stars, snowflakes, and tiny red mittens. Anna knelt beside him, brushing dust off an old tree skirt with her sleeve. "You sure about this?" she asked quietly. "Maybe it's time," Mark replied. Together they unfolded the tree, straightened the metal trunk, and fanned out the branches. It still leaned a little, but Jamie didn't care. To him, it might as well have been the grandest tree in the world. He dug deeper into a box and pulled out a small hand-painted reindeer. A name was scrawled across it in faded gold glitter. "Emily," he sounded out. "Is this your daughter's?" Mark froze. The room seemed to narrow to that single ornament in Jamie's palm. "Yes," he managed finally. "She made it in 2nd grade." Jamie cradled it gently. "Want me to hang it?" Mark stepped forward, took the ornament, held it a moment, then knelt beside Jamie and handed it back. "Go ahead," he said softly. Jamie rose onto his toes and carefully hooked it on the highest branch he could reach. He stepped back, appraising his work. "Looks like the most important one," he declared. Anna watched, eyes damp but smiling. A few minutes later, Jamie uncovered a chipped music box at the bottom of a bin. The paint was faded, but when he wound the key, it still played a thin, familiar melody. Soft notes of Silent Night floated into the room. Jamie hummed along without hesitation, then began to sing, voice clear and small. "Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright." The tune drifted through the house, wrapping itself around the dusty corners and high ceilings. Somehow, his young voice carried a weight older than he was, as if he understood more than the words said. Mark stood near the window, turned to stone. The sound hit him like surf breaking over a worn rock. Silent Night had been Emily's favorite. It was the last song she had sung to him over the phone, the Christmas Eve before everything ended, her voice crackling through the line moments before they left home to surprise him. His throat closed. Tears swelled and spilled before he could stop them. He didn't try to hide them. Anna looked up and saw him standing there, shoulders trembling, undone. She said nothing. Jamie kept singing. When the music faded, a deep hush settled over the room. For a few heartbeats, no one moved. Then Jamie turned. "Do you miss her a lot?" Mark wiped at his face uselessly. "Every day." Jamie nodded as if that made perfect sense and reached into the box again. This time he lifted out a small wrapped bundle, an old stuffed bear with a frayed ribbon. Mark's lips tugged into a faint smile. "She loved that one." Jamie hugged the bear to his chest. "Can I keep it? Just for tonight?" Mark looked at him, something swelling painfully in his chest. "Yes," he said. "You can." Jamie grinned. "So Santa remembered me this time, huh?" Mark let out a broken laugh through his tears. "Yeah," he whispered. "I think he did." The scent of steeping tea drifted in from the kitchen, mingling with the hum of the old heater. For the first time in years, the house felt less like a tomb and more like a place where people lived. Morning came pale and soft through frosted windows. The storm had passed, leaving the street outside muted and white. In the kitchen, the warmth and faint clink of dishes created a fragile sense of ordinary. They sat together at the small table. Scrambled eggs, toast, hot cocoa. A simple breakfast that felt strangely important. Jamie swung his legs under his chair, humming between bites. Anna brushed crumbs from his sweater now and then, eyes lingering on him with quiet gratitude. Across from them, Mark seemed more present than he had the night before. His gaze, usually distant, rested easily on the two of them. "This is the best cocoa I've ever had," Jamie announced, lifting his nearly empty mug. Mark smiled. "It's just from a packet." "Still the best," Jamie insisted. When they finished, Anna stood to gather the dishes. "We shouldn't leave a mess," she said automatically. Mark moved toward the sink, then paused, awkward. "I can help." She glanced back, surprised. "You don't have to." "I want to." he said, more certain this time. He grabbed a dish towel. Just tell me what I absolutely shouldn't break. She laughed, soft and real, and handed him a plate. They fell into a quiet rhythm. She rinsed, he dried. The silence between them was comfortable. Jamie seems happy here, Mark said after a moment. He's a good kid, Anna replied. A lot better than I deserve. Mark frowned. Don't say that. She shrugged, eyes on the sink. I try. I really do. But most days it feels like I'm just keeping us from falling apart. Bus to bus. Bill to bill. He was quiet, then said, You're doing more than that. I've only known you a day, but it's obvious. He looks at you like you're the whole world. Anna smiled down at the mug in her hands. Thank you. That means more than you know. Mark dried another plate more slowly. Then, almost tentative, he asked, If you had the chance, would you start over? She stilled. Go back, you mean? He shook his head. No. From where you are now. If someone offered you a real way to rebuild, would you take it? Anna leaned back against the counter, thinking. Her guarded eyes softened. I used to have plans, she said. I was studying psychology. I wanted to work with kids. Kids like Jamie, actually. I wanted to be the person who listened. What happened? I got pregnant. Her tone wasn't bitter, just flat. My parents cut me off. I dropped out. Worked whatever jobs I could find. Slept on a friend's couch until I could afford a one-bedroom. Mark listened, towel held still in his hand. Now, she said. My dream's just to keep him safe and warm. Maybe one day he'll get to dream big like I didn't. A long pause stretched between them. I have a foundation, Mark said quietly. It's small, low profile. Grants, education programs, mental health outreach. We call it the New Start Foundation. Anna's brow furrowed. There's a branch focused on early childhood trauma, he continued. It's underfunded, understaffed. But someone like you, someone who actually understands what it feels like to be left behind. He let the sentence fall away. Why would you do that for me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you haven't quit, Mark said simply. When it would have been easier to give up, you didn't. You still show up. You still smile for him. That kind of strength is rare. She blinked rapidly. For a second he thought she might cry. Instead, she looked at him long and hard. I don't want your pity, she said, steady but soft. This isn't pity, Mark replied. It's recognition. He swallowed. And maybe a little redemption. Anna exhaled slowly, still uncertain. I'm not offering charity, he added. I'm offering a way back to something you lost. Maybe even to something better. She didn't answer aloud, but the look in her eyes changed. In the space between them, something fragile but real began to form. Not a promise. Not yet. Just the first glimmer of hope. Later that morning, soft light pooled in the hallway as they gathered by the front door. Outside, the snow sat clean and untouched on the sidewalk, the city quieter than usual. Mark pulled on his coat. The air between them felt different, warmer, but edged with the knowledge that this strange visit was ending. Anna wrapped Jamie in his scarf and hat. Ready? She asked. He nodded, though his gaze slid toward the living room, to the crooked tree strung with mismatched ornaments and a single glitter-faded name. Mark opened the door. Cold air spilled in. Thank you, Anna said, voice low but sincere. For everything. Thank you, Mark replied. For trusting me. Jamie took a step toward the door, then paused. He turned back, digging into his small jacket pocket, and held out a folded piece of paper. Here, he said, pressing it into Mark's hand. I made this for you. Mark unfolded it. A handmade Christmas card drawn in bright crayon, edges uneven. On the front, a stick figure version of Mark stood beside a tree, smiling. Above them, in large block letters, Santa didn't forget us this year. Inside, in shaky handwriting, it read, I don't want you to be alone next Christmas. Mark stared at the card. His fingers trembled around the edges. Jamie shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal, and turned to leave. Jamie, wait, Mark said abruptly. The boy turned, surprised. Mark did something he hadn't done since the day his world fell apart. He dropped to his knees and pulled Jamie into a hug. It wasn't quick or polite. It was long and quiet, heavy with something too old and too deep for words. Mark held him like an anchor, Eyes closed, breath uneven. Jamie didn't pull away. He wrapped his arms around Mark's neck and held on. Anna stood in the doorway, frozen. Her lips parted, her eyes filled, but she didn't interrupt. When Mark finally let go, he kept a hand on Jamie's small shoulder and looked up at Anna. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice rough. Anna stepped forward, torn between a smile and hesitation. "We could come again," she said. "If you'd like." Mark met her eyes. "I would," he answered, almost a whisper. Then he nodded once, twice, as if granting himself permission. Anna smiled, shy but warm, and gently squeezed his hand. In his other hand he held the card. A little crumpled from the hug but still bright with color. He glanced at the living room. The crooked tree with its old lights and fading ornaments no longer looked wrong. It looked like a beginning. Weeks later, the late afternoon sun filtered through tall windows of an old bookstore, falling in golden rectangles across scarred wooden floors. Dust floated lazily in the beams. The air smelled of old paper, ink, and a hint of cinnamon from a jar of sticks near the counter. Outside, snow clung stubbornly to the cobblestones of the old town district. Christmas had come and gone, but winter stayed. Mark had stepped in only to escape the cold. He expected nothing more than a few quiet minutes among forgotten shelves. Then he rounded a poetry display and stopped. In the children's section, Jamie sat cross-legged on a colorful rug, flipping through a picture book. He was talking with the elderly shopkeeper, pointing eagerly at a drawing. "That's what he looked like," Jamie was saying. "Just like Santa, but sad. Like a Santa who lost his sleigh. But then he found us." A faint smile tugged at Mark's mouth. Anna sat in a worn armchair by the front window, a book open in her lap. Light caught in her blonde hair, turning it to threads of gold. She hadn't seen him yet. He approached quietly. When she finally glanced up, surprise brightened her face, quickly followed by warmth. "Hey," she said. "Hey," he answered. "Mind if I sit?" She motioned to the empty chair beside hers. "Please." He sank into it, hands resting awkwardly for a moment before relaxing. "Nice place." "We come every weekend," Anna said. "They let kids pick any book they want for story time. Jamie thinks it's magic." "I can tell." They watched for a moment as Jamie showed the shopkeeper a page. The old man laughed, clapped, and leaned in to listen to whatever story Jamie had invented. "How's school?" Mark asked. Her smile widened. "Good. I started an online class 2 weeks ago. Psychology again." She shook her head, almost in disbelief. "I forgot how much I loved learning." "I'm glad," Mark said. "Truly." She gave him a look that said she knew exactly who had opened that door. "Thanks to you." He shook his head. "You just needed the door unlocked. You walked through it." Anna leaned back, watching the children. "Sometimes I keep waiting for it all to fall apart," she admitted. "I'm not used to things going okay." "I understand that," he said with a small, knowing laugh. She glanced at him. "And you? How are you?" He was quiet for a long breath. "Changing," he answered at last. "I'm thinking of closing the company." Her eyes widened. "Really?" He nodded. "There's a board now. They'll be fine without me. I've had enough of boardrooms and deadlines. I want to do something that actually feels like it matters." "What will you do?" "Expand the foundation," he said. "Focus more on second chances. Support for people who feel invisible, single parents, kids, anyone trying to start over." She looked down, her expression soft. "Why now?" Across the room, Jamie was helping 2 younger kids turn the pages of a book, showing them each picture as if it were treasure. "Because one Christmas Eve, a little boy said Santa forgot him again," Mark replied. "But he didn't forget me. Somehow he saw me. He reminded me I'm still here." Anna didn't answer, but her hand brushed his briefly where it rested on the arm of the chair. That small touch said enough. After a moment, Mark turned back to her. "Would you and Jamie like to go somewhere this weekend?" he asked. "There's a place I'd like to share. Somewhere from before." She looked at Jamie, then at Mark. "We'd like that," she said simply. They gathered their things and headed toward the door. The shopkeeper slipped Jamie a cookie and a reindeer bookmark. Jamie thanked him with a bright grin. Outside, the sun hovered low, casting a soft glow across the enduring snow. Anna adjusted Jamie's scarf and took his hand. Mark walked at his other side. "I knew you wouldn't let Mommy be sad again," Jamie said suddenly, looking up at Mark. Neither adult replied, but the way they smiled, quiet, full, answered him anyway. The road wound out of the city and into the hushed countryside. Snowbanks rising on either side like frozen waves. Frost traced lace patterns on the edges of the car windows. Mark drove, hands steady on the wheel. Every so often he checked the rearview mirror, where Jamie sat humming to himself, the reindeer bookmark peeking from his jacket pocket. Anna rode in the passenger seat, wrapped in her scarf, watching the white landscape blur past. Eventually, the car stopped at the base of a small hill. Trees lined the horizon. No houses, no streetlights, just snow, quiet, and sky. Mark stepped out first. The crunch of his boots was startling in the stillness. Anna followed, and then Jamie, who immediately began climbing, leaving a trail of small footprints behind him. "This looks like a painting," Anna whispered. Mark lifted his gaze to the top of the hill, where an old oak stood, its bare branches heavy with snow. "This was our spot," he said. "My wife, my daughter, and me. We picnicked here one summer. It was the last time we came together." They started up the hill. The air was crisp, each breath visible. The sun pressed weakly through thin clouds, washing the world in pale light. "At the top," Mark continued, "she brought a ribbon. Bright yellow. She tied it to a branch and called it her dream." Anna looked at him quietly. "She wanted to be an artist," he said. "She said every year she'd come back, hang a new ribbon with a new dream." He paused. "She never got the chance." Jamie flopped backward into the snow near the tree, laughing as he waved his arms and legs, carving an angel into the white. "Mr. Mark, look," he shouted. "I'm painting with snow." Mark chuckled softly and turned to the oak. From his coat pocket he pulled a small folded cloth, a faded handkerchief frayed at the edges, stitched in uneven letters with the name Emily. Anna watched as he tied it to a low branch. The cloth fluttered gently in the breeze. "Sweetheart," he murmured, "I never stopped missing you, but I'm not going to disappear anymore. I'm still your dad. Always. But now I have to live. Not just survive." Anna stepped closer and slid her hand into his. He didn't pull away. His fingers closed tightly around hers. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. It wasn't comfort she offered, but companionship in the ache. Behind them, Jamie scrambled up the last bit of the hill, clutching a folded piece of paper. "I finished it," he called. "Want to see?" He handed it to Mark. The crayon drawing showed 3 figures under a big green tree, snowflakes falling around them, a ribbon fluttering from one branch. All 3 figures were smiling. "That's you," Jamie said, pointing. "That's me. That's Mom. I think it's the best thing I ever drew." Mark looked at the drawing for a long time. Something tightened, then loosened in his chest. "You're a real artist," he said, kneeling to Jamie's height. Jamie beamed. "Like your daughter wanted to be," Mark added, meeting his eyes. Jamie's smile softened. "Now we all have dreams," he whispered. "And we're not going to forget them." Mark stood and looked at Anna and Jamie, hand still in Anna's, his other resting gently on Jamie's small shoulder. A faint wind swept down the hill, but none of them shivered. For the first time since that long-ago picnic, Mark laughed, really laughed. The sound carried out over the snow, bright and alive. Anna turned toward him, eyes shining. "This," Mark said, voice unsteady but sure. "This feels like family." Jamie grinned. "That's because it is." The community hall glowed with soft golden light. Handmade paper snowflakes dangled in the windows, and garlands braided from yarn and recycled wrapping paper traced the walls. Laughter rose from every corner, mingling with the scents of hot cocoa, cinnamon cookies, and pine boughs. It was Christmas Eve again, but nothing like the last one. Inside the cozy space of the New Start Foundation, every chair was filled. Young kids squirmed on laps. Tired mothers sat shoulder to shoulder. Elderly folks with nowhere else to go hugged warm cups between their hands. There were no suits, no glittering decorations, no extravagant gifts. Only warmth. Presence. The quiet relief of being seen. Mark stood at the center of the room in a simple sweater and jeans. His shoulders no longer sagged under invisible weight. His eyes, once empty, were clear and steady. To his right, Anna sat in a deep green dress, her hair loose in gentle curls. She laughed softly as she helped an elderly woman unwrap a hand-knitted scarf. Up front, cross-legged on the floor, Jamie held court among a circle of children, proudly wearing a red sweater with a tree stitched on the front. He was showing the others how to cut snowflakes from old magazine pages, scattering colorful paper bits like confetti. Mark cleared his throat. The room gradually quieted as attention turned his way. I know many of us here, he began, carry stories we don't talk about much. Stories of losing things, of being left, of feeling forgotten. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. I carried mine alone for years, he went on. But standing here tonight, surrounded by people brave enough to hope again, I've learned something. A small smile touched his face. We can't change how our stories start, but we can choose what comes next. And maybe that part can be beautiful. Maybe that part can be the part we're proud of. Gentle applause spread through the hall. Some people wiped their eyes. Some simply nodded. Anna leaned toward him as he stepped down. She would be proud of you, she whispered. He met her gaze. The name didn't have to be spoken. They both knew. Later, as everyone gathered around a decorated tree to sing carols, Anna sat with Jamie at the edge of the low stage. She pulled a small tin from beneath her chair and opened it. What's that? Jamie asked. A letter you wrote last Christmas, she answered. I kept it. She unfolded the yellowed paper and read aloud, voice trembling slightly. Dear Santa, please don't forget Mommy again. She's the nicest person I know. Jamie blinked. I really wrote that. You did, Anna said. He glanced over at Mark, who was nearby speaking softly with a young mother and her child. Then he looked back at his mom. I think Santa heard me, he said. Anna didn't answer. She just kissed his forehead. Mark returned to them, his expression soft. He'd heard every word. Kneeling down, he reached into his pocket. I have something, he said, holding out a small box. Anna stared at it, startled. She opened it slowly. Inside lay a simple silver ring. No diamonds, no adornment. Just quiet beauty. We don't need perfect, Mark said, his voice low but steady. We've already lived through broken. But maybe we could be each other's miracle. Not just tonight. Every day. Anna's eyes filled. Not with surprise but with understanding. With love. She nodded. It was enough. Jamie suddenly scrambled onto the small stage, waving his arms. Excuse me, everybody, he called. The room fell silent, faces turning toward him. He pointed straight at Mark. Santa didn't forget us this year, he declared. And I think he never will again. Laughter and applause burst through the hall. Anna covered her mouth, tears shining. Mark laughed and pressed a hand to his chest as the first carol began. The memory of that night would never be of grand gestures. It would be of warmth, shared smiles, and the quiet miracle of finally being remembered. Later that night, in their small shared home, Jamie sat at the kitchen table with a fresh sheet of paper and a red crayon. The window nearby showed a sky full of slow-falling snow. He wrote carefully, Dear Santa, if there's a kid out there feeling forgotten, tell them someone remembers. Love from a kid who was remembered. He folded the letter and placed it on the windowsill, then leaned close to the cold glass and watched the snow drift down. The past was still there. It always would be. But so was the future. And this time it was warm,